Hi, Emily. Good
Hi,
afternoon
Kenan.
for you, or good evening. It should be around 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So, thank you for accepting our invitation for a talk, for a podcast in Reality Project. In this
hmm
project, actually, we do a lot of work on how teachers can develop and build their research literacy. And we're working on developing a lot of materials, a lot of resources for them.
Yep.
And meanwhile, we wanted to kind of invite you for an expert opinion on research literacy, how you have been, investigating research as a professional strategy for teachers to develop their practices and in turn build their research literacy. So before we start, would you introduce yourself, your background, and how you came to kind of be involved in action research in teacher development? A short story.
Yes. Of course. Thank you, Kenan. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Emily Edwards, and I'm currently a senior lecturer at the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. I started my career in English language teaching back in 2006. I finished university and I went straight to do the CELTA, the Cambridge English Language Teaching Certificate. And that 4-week course is very practical and sets you up to start language teaching. And I started working as an English language teacher. I actually worked in Germany for a bit, for a year, in Düsseldorf, and
Was
I
it?
worked, yeah, which was great.
I didn't know
Um,
that.
yeah, I love that. And I also worked in Slovakia,
Mm,
Romania, and then I
mm.
went to Japan, and then I ended up in Australia.
Right.
And in Australia, I kept teaching English language. There are lots of international students here in Australia, so there was lots of work. But all of that time, sort of about 5, 6 years of being an English language teacher, I felt that there was something missing from my practice. So
Mm,
I could teach well, I enjoyed the classes, the students were wonderful. But every time I had a challenge or an issue or something I didn't understand, I didn't really know where to go for help.
mm.
I looked in textbooks, activity books to find a new activity. I thought if I had a different activity for teaching, that would solve the problem.
Yeah.
But there was nothing beyond that.
Mm,
So I was working. So then during that time I was working, I also did the diploma in English language teaching. And in that diploma course, one of the educators was actually doing his PhD and he knew a lot about the research in the
mm.
area of English language teaching and he introduced it to us and it was really the first time that I understood there was actually research out there,
Oh,
in this area. I had no idea before that, which is seems incredible to think
yeah,
about that now.
exactly.
And he was saying, there's this research in listening, in how to read and writing, in classroom behavior, in motivation, all of these areas. I was like, wow, okay. And then I did a Master of Applied Linguistics where I obviously got a lot more research, sort of different areas of applied linguistics and TESOL. And straight after that, I then decided I was teaching again. Okay, I really want to get involved in action research. It was
Right.
something that was introduced on the masters.
Mm,
And I thought, okay, this sounds like a really interesting way of combining research and practice.
yeah.
And in Australia at that time, Professor Anne Burns, who many of you may have heard of,
Yes.
she had just started working with Cambridge English and English Australia, an organization that represents English language teaching sector in Australia, to set up a program, a national program to encourage teachers to take part in research and give them a structure over a year of investigating an issue or a problem or a challenge in their classroom and going through the action research process together as a group
Mm,
and then presenting and publishing. So I applied to take part in this program in 2012 and luckily I was accepted. And
mm,
that was really a turning point for me. So I was, had a lot of guidance about what action research is,
mm.
how to do it. And at the same time, me and a group of about 10 teachers, we were all investigating those questions in our classrooms.
Very good. Oh, you also
Really
did
great.
your own action research in your own classroom. That's great.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah. And
I think it's a great way of learning because I know some people they do action research, but they have never done action research in their classrooms or very maybe limited to kind of practicing how action research is done in the classroom. What are the dynamics? What are the processes? But they know on paper, but not in practice in general. I think
yes.
you're having done it yourself gave you a lot of insights probably when you're researching how action research is being done and what people do.
It did. It gave me a lot of insight, especially into the challenges
Mm.
that teachers face. So, it can look good on paper, what you're planning to do, and then in the reality of the day-to-day work of teaching, things don't always go to plan.
Exactly.
We we also had at that school I was working, we had a rolling intake, which means students could start any Monday.
Hmm.
And they could take part in the course for 10 weeks or 5 weeks
Mhm.
or a few
Yeah.
months. There was no structure around that because that's the way that type of teaching works and that kind
Yeah.
of teaching center.
Hmm.
And that was really difficult for me when I was starting the research. I was thinking, well, how am I going to track which students are here at which time? How
Exactly.
am I going to introduce an
Oh,
intervention and know what happens with the different, it's not one group of students over a period of time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great story, and I didn't know much of these that you have said today as a background story of yours. And I didn't know
Hmm.
that you've been in Europe. I didn't know that you did action research yourself. It's great to find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we know each other. Maybe we've known each other many years, but stories are always, behind the scenes, yeah, unless they are told.
Yes, yes. And that's the
Yeah.
starting story.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, let's come back to our main topic as well now. I mean, I know teacher research literacy is a different term than action research, but action research is a way of, I think, building teacher research literacy. So it's basically
Yes.
I mean, what is the literacy or what is the competence you would describe around your work that teachers are developing, and how is that related to their kind of literacy in general?
So I think teacher research literacy has quite a few different aspects. One aspect, I guess, that I started with in my own work was being able to access, read, and then apply the research that's been done by others, which can be very difficult sometimes when it's not accessible.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that feeds into doing your own research. That's another whole area is being able to conduct your own research in the classroom, such as action research. That's one framework of several. And in order to do that, you can access and have a look at the literature and the frameworks and the principles that have been introduced, or you can just start with your own questions without consulting other literature and go from there. So
Hmm.
within that sort of aspect of teacher research literacy, being able to do your own research, there's also, I think, lots of sub themes.
Hmm.
Things like data literacy, being able to deal with data, collect data, analyze data. That's quite difficult for teachers who maybe have never done that before.
Yeah.
And then there is literacy in the processes of the action research or the other framework itself. So
Hmm.
understanding the different steps of plan, act, observe, reflect, but they are not linear. You diverge at many different moments and how those cycles fit into your teaching process, and how that could work for you in your context.
Hmm.
And then there's things towards the end of doing an action research project, such as publishing literacy, being able to consider the different genres for publication, which genres are most suitable for me. Am I going to be presenting to my colleagues or at a conference or creating a poster, or do I want to write a journal article?
Yeah.
So different ways of publishing is also an aspect of it, I think.
Yeah.
And then one area that I'm really interested in as well is the institutional aspects of teacher research literacy, and also the institutional support that's needed for action research. So I think when communities or groups of people within institutions get together to work on teacher research literacy as a group, that's much more powerful.
Exactly. Thank you. This is a great overview, and it is very closely aligned actually with what we're trying to say in the project as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, having this overall understanding of your own perspective of teacher research literacy, how do you think action research, when people do it in the classroom, especially help them build their research literacy. Being a researcher in the classroom, doing research with students, for students, how is that connected? Do you have some insights on that?
Yes, so I think it gives you a really, really good tool. So the action research cycle is like a tool um, to give you structure for how to collect information from your classroom or from your own reflections from your students, from what's happening when you observe or look at the work produced in your classroom, and to be able to then integrate that into connecting it to reflecting and connecting that to ideas and concepts and thinking, okay, well, how can this be improved? What can I change? What can I do to move forward? And how does that align maybe with what other people are doing in my context, in my school, in my college, or perhaps with the wider literature on English language teaching? So it's a really useful tool for integrating practice and the data and information in the classroom with theory, either your own theory or other people's theory. And I also think that it is a tool that gives teachers a reflective mindset.
Yeah,
So it develops this way of thinking about practice that means that you always have to be reflective from
yeah.
then on. So a few of the teachers I've worked with and asked about their experiences, they actually called it, more than one teacher called it the action research curse.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
once you've done action research and reflected in that way on your classroom, you can never really go back. You're
yeah.
always thinking in that way, even if it's not maybe a formal project. It's not something that you're always writing up as a project, but it's a way of thinking about your teaching.
Hmm.
That means it's very, very practical because at any time you can think, oh, this is really difficult, or I'm really not sure about, I don't understand this area. And it gives you that way of being able to either collect information and or reflect and
Hmm.
make those connections that allow you to move forward and make improvements and change things.
Mhm. I think at this point we need to make something clear. People think if they do action research, they will kind of fix a problem in their teaching. But we
Hmm.
have always talked about that with maybe you, with Anne, and with others as well. I mean, action research is not about fixing issues and problems in the classroom, but it's about understanding them and then coming up with multiple kind of solutions or multiple ways of addressing them. Because I think
Yes, yes.
we have always talked about that with Anne too, like problematizing the issues. It means like understanding them, seeing how we can address them, how we can use them as an opportunity to improve our practices, etc., rather than, okay, I have fixed this problem that is stable. This will not be an issue anymore. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. It's not a simple, okay, well, great, I've got this solution, there it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
It's a continuous process. It's a
Mm.
continuous process of trialing. It's a really good way, I think, of trialing new ideas, new activities, seeing how they go. If they work, maybe for that time period, but they may stop working after a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the way of thinking, okay, this might be an issue that I want to explore, but it's definitely not a quick fix
Yeah.
way of finding solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is hard for teachers to understand. They think they need to
Mm,
fix issues by if they do action research, then it should help them fix it. But I think in definitions it says action research is conducted to improve practices. It never
yeah.
says it is used to fix pedagogical issues and challenges you have. Of course, it help you kind of improve it, and then in a way you might be kind of sorting them out for a while. But as you
Hmm.
said, they may stop working in another context with another set of students in another classroom. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point to make actually for teachers. So it's more about understanding and coming up with insights into what doesn't work and how can I make it work in a way for this particular time
Yes.
and place, I think.
I think it's useful to think about it as giving you a toolbox of
Yeah.
strategies.
Mm,
So every time you learn something from doing action research, that gives you another strategy that you can then apply in a different context to help something, another situation that you may want to adjust.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a continuous process of having strategies,
Yeah.
which I felt like I never had
Yeah,
before.
yeah. But I like the way you put it because I mean you never kind of give up using the strategy, but you use that strategy from your toolbox, as you said, in another context by adapting it, adjusting it, by making it maybe in a different form, in a different shape, in a different process. So actually, you adopt the existing strategies based on other contexts. Even, I mean,
Hmm.
so you don't need to do action research all the time. When you do one on a topic,
No.
they can help you kind of in your future practices in different contexts, I would say.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's different levels of action research as well. There's, making it quite formal. So the program I took part in
Mm.
back in 2012 with other teachers, that was a formal national program. And
Mm.
it ends with a formal presentation and a project. But you can do it more informally with groups of
Mm.
teachers in your classroom. You can also do it just very personal, personally thinking about your own context without sharing it with anybody.
Exactly.
Um,
Mm.
so really depending on what works for you and your context, yeah, different sort of levels
Yeah.
of implementing action research.
Yeah. Saying that, I was planning to highlight the kind of the concept of sustainability in action research. I think
Hmm.
this is also a key part of sustainability through action research. So how do I maintain my interest in action research? How do I use the positive outcomes of my action research in my future teaching? It's not kind of transitioning something from one context to another as it is, but it is like getting it and adapting it in another context. I think sustainability as a mindset is important for researchers to have. How will I use that information that I generated in this research in other contexts, in other
Hmm.
practices? I know you published about sustainable action research as well. What would you
Yes.
say about that?
Yes, I've thought about this concept a lot. It's something that came out of my PhD, which
Mm,
explored the impact of that action research program that I took part in myself. And what I realized through my PhD research was, okay, sustainability is very important and it often doesn't exist or it's not
mm,
possible. One aspect, I think, is the teacher's own sustainability of their reflective mindset and their ability to keep doing action research at different levels. Like I said, not always at a formal sort of capacity, but your ability to keep going, to keep reflecting, and keep using different aspects of the toolkit from action research in different ways according to how you need it to be. So, for example, some teachers may um, then go and mentor other teachers in action research. Some teachers may go and conduct more action research with their colleagues. Some may use the action research framework for an application for a scholarship or for a promotion. And some teachers may develop workshops based on their findings. So these are all different ways of sustaining the action research
yeah.
yourself. But also, I think there's a very important aspect of sustainability, which is institutional.
Mm,
So
yeah.
when a teacher or a group of teachers take part in action research, it's like the benefits are lost if the institution doesn't try to harness those benefits
Yeah.
by, for example, thinking, okay, so how can we use these findings from this action research project? Can we integrate materials into other courses in our institution, not just the one that the teacher's working on, but how does that knowledge apply? Because it's context specific, really, really useful knowledge
Yeah.
that no one else has generated. It's not just generic knowledge that's out there in the literature. It's really specific to the institution. So it could be incredibly helpful. Um, so maybe integrating it into courses, into curricula, using that initial action research project or the teacher's knowledge to then train other teachers to take part in action research and kind of encourage a culture of inquiry or a
Mm.
community of inquiry within an institution. And I know that in Australia, following the action research program that Anne Burns set up,
Yeah.
other institutions have wanted to set up their own internal action research programs, either following a similar kind of time frame and model or
Yeah.
slightly different, and have invited her in to advise them on that. So that is when
Mm.
institutions say, okay, this is something really great. We want to use it and harness it and then develop our own professional development programs that really embrace that. So it's difficult for institutions to do that. And
Yeah.
I think it involves, before the action research actually starts, sitting down with the teachers, with the managers and the coordinators and saying, okay, well,
Mm.
what's useful for you to investigate in your context and how can that actually be applied across the school or the institution before you start
Mhm.
so that so that your individual goals as a teacher align with your institution's goals, or maybe don't necessarily align, but
Yeah.
you can see whether there's a connection there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in my experience in the past, I have always seen that there has been a lack of institutional, not support. They support, not in the
Mm,
way that will help teachers to sustain their in a kind of commitment to doing action research, because people feel demotivated or sometimes very motivated when institutions support and recognize their kind of contribution, or they come up with new knowledge from their classroom. I
hmm.
think we need to kind of support the idea that institutions should support them doing it, which is fine. But then they need to follow up. Okay, what did this action research find? What did this teacher or these teachers find in their action research? How can I use that information? I think that was the missing aspect in my own experience. So maybe teachers need to be kind of mediators of or good disseminators of their own action research with their institutions, where they kind of report issues and challenges and also achievements they have made in their action research, so that the institution could see the possibility of using this kind of information and knowledge.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's sometimes that's hard. With the teachers that I've worked with in Australia, maybe it depends on a bit on sort of national culture as well, or the culture of the teachers.
Yeah.
So in Australia, there's this phenomenon that I wrote about in my PhD called tall poppy syndrome,
Mm.
where if somebody is trying to or is seen to be trying to promote themselves too
Mm.
much,
Yeah.
then the others um, bash them down, cut them down.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, and I read about this in I think it was in America in secondary schools, the same thing. So maybe it's something to do with education. I don't know, where there is a culture um,
Peer.
of every equality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
equality. And so when somebody is, so that's why I think I agree with you that teachers need to be able to promote their research as well. But
Yeah.
I think it's easier when you're working in a group with others. It's not just
Yeah.
you. It's not just about
Yeah.
me personally being
Exactly.
my research and I look at me, I'm so great. But
Yeah.
it's like, look at this group, they're really great. And when the
Mm.
managers or those who are in charge of making, approving decisions about making changes to curricula or to the way things are done, if they are involved from the beginning, they're much more likely to be on board in allowing that sustainability to continue.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a good strategy for teachers not to avoid this kind of conflicts with their institutions. So they should maybe,
Mm,
when they start action research, they should communicate with the institution and then show them why they do it and how are they addressing issues that might be commonly experienced by other teachers in their own classrooms. So maybe
yeah.
when making decisions on the topic, they can explain to the institution right from the beginning, and then show them how they are going to do it as a bottom
Yes.
professional development activity. Because we usually, in my experience, teachers wanted to study a topic and we always said, okay, but we didn't we didn't try to see how they are aligned with the institutional goals or institutional expectations or anything like that. It's all about, I think,
Mm,
communicating your research as a teacher with the community. I mean, with the people you work with and with the people who lead you in the institution.
yes. Yeah, I think those early conversations would be incredibly helpful.
Mhm. Yeah. So, are there anything you want to add? Because you have addressed all of my questions, actually.
Um, just that yeah, I think that it's difficult. It's difficult to to promote action research or to develop a culture of inquiry in institutions where that hasn't existed before. So in some institutions, there's already that there. There's lots of people doing research,
Mm,
maybe further research, PhD research, as well as action research. But when you're
mm,
going into a new institution and there isn't that culture there, it does take time. It does take time, and it's good if there are sort of multiple options available to staff.
yeah.
And this could be something that maybe the National Professional Development Organization might be able to help with. But
Mm,
um, whether you can take part at action research, not just at your institutional level, but at the national level, maybe international level on another kind of program, or join a network like the IATEF or Research SIG, where
mm,
you can learn more about different types of teacher research.
yeah.
All of those, there's different dimensions that you can access to
Mm,
help
mm.
develop that culture of inquiry.
Yeah. Before we finish, maybe we could come up with some kind of a set of kind of benefits for teachers. So, how do teachers change if they do action research? What are the maybe short-term and long-term benefits? Can you just reflect on that?
Mm.
So it's to inspire teachers as well.
Yes, yes. So, lots of benefits of doing action research. One of the key ones, I think, is the sort of shifts in identity, becoming an action researcher or a teacher researcher, and it's very empowering
Yeah.
because it allows you to you have this tool for reflecting on your practice, integrating theory and practice, and it
Mm,
gives you lots of different avenues to then pursue, whether you stay as a teacher or you become more of a researcher. You've got lots of different avenues to go down. So it's empowering in terms of identity, of your identity, professional identity. I think it does shift your mindset as well. It gives you this reflective mindset, which enables you to be critically reflective when you come up with other situations in the future, whether that's in your teaching practice or professional practice.
mm,
So those are the two key areas. If you're then doing action research as part of a group, then I think there are lots of benefits in terms of feeling a sense of belonging and professionalism as well. Being part of that group and being part of that network is incredibly beneficial.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the three areas I'm thinking of right now. Is there anything that I've missed, Kenan?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think being or calling themselves a researcher and teacher is a great empowering process or great benefit because I think they feel that they are not only investigating their teaching but also changing it over time. I mean,
Hmm.
I had a lot of teachers who told me later in years, they said they
Mm,
became more adaptive to any kind of context after being able to research their practices. One said, I would never have believed that I could teach in primary school, but when I lost my job and I was offered a job in a primary school, I just thought I can do it and I did it. And
mm,
she said this is because I did a lot of action research and I saw that I developed confidence into how I can, kind of design my teaching based on different circumstances under different
yes.
conditions. I think what you said, like empowered teachers, empowering teachers, is more like kind of giving them self-efficacy about or the belief that they can adapt their teaching based on the circumstances and different contexts. This is also a great long-term benefit I noticed. I didn't write about it, but I often, you know, hear people from people that they really benefited in different ways that are not visible or traceable
Yes.
when they have this kind of informal conversations with me. But it was like
Mm,
even after 10 years, and they said, you know what, I still remember what I did. I still remember how I changed my teaching. I still remember how I felt kind of happy doing research. And I'm still kind of feeling that confidence it gave me even after some years.
mm.
Yeah.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I like this perspective because all we want in for teachers is to do professional development and to sustain their enthusiasm, their commitment to teaching better over time. And I
Yes.
think action research prepares or gives them a basis, kind of conceptual basis or emotional maybe basis even that keep them motivated and engaged in doing or teaching better.
Mm. Some of the teachers that I work with talked about feeling re-energized after teaching for a long time, so maybe 20 years,
Yeah,
feeling re-energized by going through the action research process because it gives you a different way of thinking about things and thinking about your students and about your practice,
yeah,
which links with
exactly.
that.
I mean, one of the things that I often observe, they become closer to their students because they exchange feedback, they exchange reflection, even though they collect data through survey or some interviews, or they observe their students and then take a lot of notes about individual students in the classroom. There is
Mm.
actually a big impact on how they set up, how they establish relationship with their students, how they come to understand their students, which is often kind of rare activity in many classrooms. So people teach their students without knowing them, and this research process brings them closer. And I often like that perspective.
Yes, because if before I did action research, I was not regularly, I would get feedback from students if they offered it, but didn't have a strategy for regularly talking to my students about what they wanted, how they were experiencing the class, and what they thought could be changed or improved or done differently. So it really gives you that ability to incorporate students' voice into your teaching, which is really important.
Yeah, and I think they also start to rely on data or evidence when something is confirmed or contradicted by students' reflections or kind of data they
Mm,
provide. They also see, how they can challenge their assumptions. If they are maybe biased about some issues, then they actually address these biases as well when they have data. Without having it, I think we always make some assumptions about how learning is taking place, why students don't work or study
mm,
hard or something. But the data clarifies
yeah,
the path. So you see how you need to proceed in teaching and in your profession more clearly when you understand the world of students, internal world of students, when they tell you the stories about themselves. Yeah.
definitely. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm. So it's a great conversation.
Mm.
I'm really happy to have done it with you. Thank you very much, and we hope to meet you again, Emily.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kenan. I hope so. Not before too long.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.